Okay, welcome back to Faithful Hacking. We're going to look at creating a virtual machine. Now the reason we're creating this virtual machine is only for the ability to extract the usernames and passwords out of it. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to go into Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager and we're going to create a new machine. So as we go through here, we create this machine. We're going to pay attention to dynamically allocating the drive and how we export that drive. So let's go ahead and choose new up in the corner there, and we're going to create this machine. Now we'll be using Windows 2003 for this machine. The reason we're using 2003 is, well, it works with really small disk sizes and it works with 64 megabytes of RAM, so really small RAM sizes too. So what I'm going to use is 128 meg of RAM, because why not? 128 meg seems to work flawlessly with Windows 2003. So I'm going to use 128 meg of RAM there. Going to keep moving forward, and as we click through this, we're going to create a virtual hard disk now. Here's the deal. As we create this virtual hard disk, we are going to need to convert this to a raw image. So we're going to choose VDI. We're going to choose dynamically allocated. But whatever size we choose will be the actual size of the disk. So dynamically allocated, that's cool. If we make this thing 40 gig, when we convert this to a raw format, it will be 40 gigabytes. So keep that in mind. So we're going to make this pretty small. And the reason for that is because converting it to a raw format is as if we actually have a physical drive. So dynamically allocated, that's totally fine right now. That saves us some space. Then we got that 4 gig drive. 4 gig is plenty for Windows 2003. Now I've got Windows 2000 specified there, but 2003 would be fine if you're using a 2003 image. Now we need to go through and make a couple of settings changes inside the virtual machine. So let's go ahead and look at that. We're going to go up to settings. Once you pop into settings, then you can go through and make some changes. But just to show you that the size right now is 2 megabytes. We created the VDI. It is 4 gig on the disk, but it is actually only taking 2 megabytes of space right now. When we install it, it's going to take about 1.8 gigabytes. But remember, when we export it to a raw format, it will take 4 gigabytes. So do not make your disk like 400 gigabytes right now, thinking, oh, I always make it 400 gig because it's dynamically allocated. I'll never use it. In this case, we are. So we are going to use it this time. So I'm going to do a couple things. Turn off the floppy drive, drop it down to 90% execution cap. Go over to display, crank up the display to give it 100%. Hit the storage, and here's where we need to select our hacked version of 2003 or whatever you're using, or the demo version. So we have that 2008. I have a 2008 version there. So let me click through, see if I can find the 2003. I think I've got it over in my virtual machines folder. So if you don't have that one, go ahead and get our class image, the one we use only here for the lab inside the class. So let me go through and see if I've got that thing. Going to select it. I think it's in VirtualBox. Yep, there we go. So I got my 2003 image and open. Now I've got that selected. Going to go down to audio. I don't need audio. This is going to be a server, so it doesn't need any audio on it. The network, in this case, we don't need anything special with the network. However, if we do want to export it, it's a good idea to use the MT server, or just remember that 545 EM at the end. That allows us to export it in a number of different formats. The USB, no change. Shared folders, no change. User interface, no change. Click OK. Click Start. That is it. We get this thing started up. A few changes we're going to make. We're going to turn off the Control-Alt-Delete, so it doesn't require us to do Control-Alt-Delete every time you pop into it. It's OK. If you have to do Control-Delete, no biggie. But it's an easy change in a local security policy, so we can turn the thing off. And in a virtual machine, it's a little bit of a pain. You have to hit the host delete key, or you have to go at the top and you have to choose Input, Keyboard, Control-Delete to get to it. So let's go ahead and go down. Choose F8 to select and say yes. We're going to choose the quick format on NTFS because there's no reason to spend a long time formatting this disk, and especially since it's a virtual machine. Now, why are we looking at virtual machines? We're looking at Windows password dumps. Well, everybody uses virtual machines now, so we've got to be using Windows virtual machines and Linux virtual machines. And we've got to know how to convert virtual machines to raw images, how to mount those raw images, and how to surf those drives. Now, I do say that it is possible to surf a VMDK or a VDI without converting it to a raw image. We won't look at that. Anyway, it will help for our forensics class. So when we go into forensics, we will be doing this too. And the forensics will be using all raw images. So we'll be able to take that. Now, choosing the insert Control-Alt-Delete, we are going to, or the host delete key, we're going to try to disable that as we go into the virtual machine. So give it a little more time. The entire process takes about 10 minutes, so we'll speed this one up just a little bit. Press Enter here to speed this layer along. Now, I'm not going to press a key to boot from the CD-ROM. I'm going to let it boot from the hard drive. All the system files are copied over. We're going to choose a couple things like the username, the user and organization, the typical network settings, etc. But that's good. It's got to run through its little setup process before we can go do those things. So as we sit here and wait, let it install its devices, make its little registry entries. Taking longer than I expected. Okay, our region for the name, just going to choose user. For the organization, just going to type organization. Now for the number of users, I'll do like 99,000 or 9,999. I'm not going to enter an administrator password right now because that's just for ease of use. We will have to enter a password later. For this, victim00, whatever you want to name the system is fine. Continuing without the administrator password, that way when we go through, we don't have to type it. Now, in this case, we are in the Eastern time zone, so we're going to go through and we're going to select the Eastern time zone and pop that in. Doesn't really matter, but there you go. We're on the prompt, so why not do it? Go through. Once it gets up to the network settings, it's going to ask us if we want to go through a custom network setup or just do typical. We're going to go ahead and choose the typical setup as soon as that pops up on the screen. And with the typical setup, it's going to do DHCP, pull the IP address down, and it's going to set up your first interface and all those kind of things. So typical settings, choose next. Work group is just fine. Choose next. Carry on. And copy the files over, completing the installation. Should pop up anytime. All right, so now Windows starting. It's going to ask us to do the Control-Alt-Delete. We'll walk through removing that. If you want to get rid of it, it's just for you. You don't have to get rid of it for what we're doing. But it is just an annoyance, so it's nice to get rid of it. Yeah, it says my battery's low, but it's not. So I don't know why it's saying that. Kind of weird. My battery's fine. All right, so you hit Host Delete, or go up to the top, Input, Keyboard, Control Delete. So we'll just go up to the top really fast. We'll choose Input, Keyboard, Control Alt Delete. It's going to ask us to install the service pack as soon as it gets started. We'll go ahead and choose, yeah, go ahead and do that. You can also, remember, we will install the VirtualBox tools, the guest editions, after we get this done. It doesn't require a reboot, so we can just go through, install it. Once it's done, go do the VirtualBox guest editions. So we got to wait for this thing. It only takes a second, so it's not that bad. All right, finish. Now that's done. We're going to scroll down the bottom of this screen, choose finish, scroll down to the bottom of the next screen. Once we get to the bottom of the next screen, we're going to uncheck the, or check the don't display this page. And then we'll go up to devices, switch over to insert guest editions, give it just a second to get all loaded up. Then we'll right click start. And let's go ahead and change some properties in the start. So let's go over, when we go into this, we should change some of the start properties, make it a little easier to use. But let's go ahead and do the VirtualBox editions. This is x86. This is not a 64-bit system. It's a 32-bit system. So we'll choose that one. Everything here is default option. Yes, yes, accept all, continue, all those kind of things. Continue anyway. Yes, trust it all. I'm sure it's completely trustworthy. And yes, reboot. So after it reboots, it'll come back up. We'll be able to resize our screen. We'll have the display working. So hopefully all of you are getting about the same place. So you're making progress about the same way. So we got that CD image. We can remove that thing once the thing gets started up, but not a big concern for us. Waiting for it to start. Yes, my battery's low. Let's go on. Keyboard, Control, Delete. Pop right through administrator right there. OK, so now we're in here. We've got this big start menu. Let's go ahead and change that. Let's make this a little bit easier to use. So we're going to right-click this, a little more compact, so we can use it when we have low resolution. So go to Properties, choose Classical, Customize, Display Administrative Tools at top, Display Log Off, and get that in. If you didn't choose Display Administrative Tools, like I just actually missed it, then you'll actually have to go to Settings and Control Panel, because you notice your Administrative Tools is missing over here. So you have to go to Settings, Control Panel. If you look down through Control Panel, because we are in 2003, that's a little different. Same options in 2008, same options in 2008 R2, and the same options in 2012 and 2016. But you'll notice that in 2012 and 2016, you'll have to go through and you have to tell it to show you the stuff. So now we went over to Administrative Tools. I remembered, oops, let's display that. So let's choose Display Administrative Tools. Local Policies. So open the Security Settings under Local Policies. Go down to Security Options. Look down that list. We'll expand it out. You'll see that Control-Alt-Delete on there. So as we scroll down, you'll see Do Not Require, Control-Alt-Delete, Enabled, Apply, OK. That local security policy change will prevent it from giving us a Control-Alt-Delete thing. There's another kind of cool thing, and that's converting SIDs over to usernames. We can disable that. We can allow anonymous SID. That's cool. When we go in, we do SID to user or user to SID. It'll work from a regular user object. We don't have to be an administrator to run it. So we're actually not doing that on this machine. But there you go. That's where you change that setting so you can be a regular user object and do that kind of stuff. Now, if you want to get rid of the shutdown menus, then that's over in a group policy. So you need to go to group policy to do that. But in the local security settings, we can get rid of that Control-Delete, which is just a great advantage. So now we got rid of that. We can close this thing out. Let's create a couple of user accounts. Just going to clean up the desktop really fast here. Auto arrange. And now let's go through and let's create some user accounts on this box. First of all, go to local users. This is where you do it under manage. You can go through and check your user properties. We're going to set a password for administrator. I'm just saying a password of password. So as you go through it, oops, mistyped password. All right, choose an OK. Password's been set. Great. Now you can actually create all your users from right there, but it's a pain in the neck. So go to the command prompt to create your users, and it's a lot faster. So what you do is open a command prompt, do a cd /net user /add. Whatever your user is, we'll just create user 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is net user, oops, I missed the /add, user 01, password 1, 2, 3, active yes. And now let me go back and add the /add. There we go. So now we've got that. That created user 1 with a password of password 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to make user 2. And let's change the password a little bit in this one. We'll just make this user 2. All right, now we're going to do this for user 3. For user 3, we'll get a little more creative on the password. If anybody's seen that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, done. And then for user 4, we're going to get really creative on our password. Instead of that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're going to choose 1QAZ2WSX, our awesome secure password, and we'll press enter. And if you notice, that's going diagonally down your keyboard. That's the reason we're typing that. So now if we type net user, we can see the users in the system. Those are all present, and we're good to go. So now we need to shut down the machine, and we're going to export this machine. So this is, we're not going to be doing any utilities inside the machine right here. We're not going to be doing anything else inside this machine as a server or anything else like that. So you can select whatever you want, pop out. The only reason for creating this machine is a demonstration on how to export a VDI to a RAW image. And then once we get that RAW image going, we can work with that. So now, I'm over in my VirtualBox directory right now where I keep my virtual machines. We can see that I've got my victim W2K VDI there. See that VDI, it's 1.8 gigabytes. So move this window. Alrighty. So now we're going to use VBoxManage. Now VBoxManage show, and we're going to look at the hard drive info, HD info for Victim2 VDI. We'll see how big that thing is. And if you'll notice, the capacity is 49.6. The format variant is dynamic default. So we see that it's going to be 4 gig. So it's a 4 gig image. It is dynamic. That means when we export this thing, it will take 4 gig on our disk. Let's go through and see how much space I've got in my computer. I've got 5.8 gig remaining. Yay, 4 gig will be just fine. I'll have an entire gig left over. So let's go ahead and try to export this thing out. Let's see. We're going to use VBoxManage. Yep, as I sweat my capacity here. VBoxManage. And unfortunately, it will not tab complete. So you're going to do clonehd -- the format's going to be raw. And then you're going to pop in what you want to change, the VDI, and then what you want to change it to. And we're going to change it .img. It does not take long. You can time it. It's my drive is pretty fast. So I actually pop up and I can see how fast my drive is. So let me do a quick little HD parm on my drive while this is running because, you know, why not? So I'm going to pop in there, do a HD parm, dash a lowercase t, capital T, dev, SDA, enter. Yeah, after I say my drive is pretty fast, then it does this to me. I guess that has something like using 100% of your capacity. So yeah, that's pretty good. I'm getting about 4 gig per second on the cached reads. And then the buffer disk reads, I'd hope to be around 500 meg. I'm 458 meg. You know, that's respectable. That's good. It's not a NVMe drive or anything like that, but it's a respectable, it's a good drive. So now that I've exported this thing, let's go ahead and look at my disk space. Sweet, I got 1.8 gig remaining. Awesome. Let's go ahead and look at the images in here. We got that image. It's exactly 4 gig, exactly what the system said it would be. So we've got that victim W2K there, .img. We have the old one right there, the VDI. The VDI is what the machine will use whenever you start it up. We did not alter the machine at all. So if you want to go back into VirtualBox and run that thing, that's totally fine. Now, how do we get this image file to mount on our Linux box? How are we going to do that? Well, here's how. A couple of the choices. We can try to just mount this thing right off the bat. We can just say, you know what, why not? We'll mount it. So we'll make a directory. We'll call it whatever we want. We can call it virtual disk mount. We can call it mount, call it mnt. Don't confuse it with /mnt. /mnt is a default directory inside the system. Don't confuse it with /mnt. So let's use the mnt. And we're going to try to mount this thing over. What type to use? Maybe NTFS if it understands it. NTFS-3G maybe. Maybe a VFAT, maybe exFAT. give it a shot. The option we need to use is loop. Read write. And then we're going to just try to pop this over to mount. And that's the mount directory you create right then. And it's like, I don't know what NTFS3G is. It's probably NTFS-3G. So we'll give that a shot. And it says, you know what? It doesn't have a valid NTFS, wrong device. And if we look at this thing, let's go ahead and fdisk this thing after we'll give it a shot for VFAT. Just try. And it's like, no, bad super block, bad option. All right, we're going to have to look at the drive. Let's see where the sector starts, how this thing's working. So let's check file. Okay, good. It sees it's got a boot sector on it when we type file and then the name of the image. Start sector 63, but we'll actually need to see what the size is and everything. Let's run fdisk on it. So we're going to run fdisk on this image. Okay, fdisk is able to see the image. It is able to see the type as NTFS. And we can see at the top, units, sectors of 1 times 512. So we do have 512 byte sectors, and so we can choose that moving over in that size. We're not going to be able to choose the mount option here because we're going to have to skip that portion. There's a cool utility built into Linux that's going to let us skip that option altogether, and that is the loopback setup or low setup. So we're going to use low setup now. Options on that, we're going to use -F for the first free device, -P for partition scan. Let's look at this really fast. So the -F is find the first unused device, which will be loop 0. Should be loop 0, but if you've ever done anything with low setup before, then it'll actually be loop 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be. So you need to be root to do this, so sudo this thing. Okay, so we did it. Let's go ahead and list what we have inside of low setup. So let's look at our loopback devices, low setup -L. Well, okay, there we go. We've got our image in there under dev loop 0. All right, well, let's check out dev loop 0. Let's fdisk that thing -L, and let's see what dev loop 0 has inside of it. So I'm going to do that fdisk -L dev loop 0. And you can see it's got loop 0 P1. That means partition 1. So cool. That means I can mount that. So let's just try it. Not even going to put an option in there because it looks like it's going to be recognized. So I'm going to do dev loop 0 P1 to /mount. And once we do that, let's go ahead and look into the mount. And ta-da, you've got the Windows machine. So everything in the Windows machine is completely accessible. We'll be actually going into Windows System 32 config for our Hive and SAMDump stuff. But we're not even going to get to that part right now. Right now, we just wanted to look at how to create the machine, how to export the machine to an image file, and then how to mount the image file in your Linux box. So if you got through that exercise and you got the thing mounted, then hurrah, then we're good to go. So we can move on from that point and we can keep working on it. Hope that this helped, and I hope that everybody's having a great day.